Hi, everybody, and welcome to GenFriends. I'm your host, Cheri. Sorry about Dan. We can't take him anywhere. I'm so excited to have this. I think it's going to be a really great edition of GenFriends, a very special one, a very important one. So before we introduce our special guest, I'd like to introduce our panel. We've got Laura Hedgecock from Treasure Chest of Memories. Hi, Laura.
Hi, everybody.
So glad you're here. Good to see you. We have Shelley Murphy, our family tree girl.
Good evening. Glad to be here tonight. Looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be great. We've got Dan Earl, our family history guy.
Hello, glad to be here.
Glad you're here. And last but not least, it's just where you are in my little chiclet thing is Mary Kircher Roddy from MKR Genealogy. Hi, Mary.
Hi there. Good to be here.
Good to have you here too. And we have a special guest, a friend of all of us that we've wanted to have on the show for a while. So we're glad that she's on tonight. She writes the best, she's got the best title for a blog. It's for a genealogy blog. It's called Like Herding Cats. And isn't that what it's like when you're trying to gather your family? And this is Jenny Hormer. So we are so grateful that you're here and that you've come to talk to us tonight. And what you're going to talk to us about is something that happens to a lot of people when they decide to dive into the world of DNA. And that is those unexpected test results. And you had a very, very unexpected test result. You had a shock in your family tree. And, you know, you've been writing about it with your blog posts. And I just think it's fabulous that a lot of people wouldn't want to share. And a lot of people would want to kind of keep it under wraps. But I think you sharing and telling people how you've gone about dealing with this is going to help a lot of people. So thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. I mean, thank you for having me, because it is such an important thing to talk about, that there are lots of sides of DNA results, you know, the happy stuff and the really important stuff of solving mysteries. And then there's another side that people don't really talk about as much because it's uncomfortable and, you know, so I don't know if you want me to just dive into my story or
tell us what happened. You decided to jump on the DNA bandwagon like all the rest of us did and thought how exciting and how fun and what am I, am I German? What am I, like so many people do. And then you got very, very unexpected results.
Yeah, I was an early DNAer, 2012. I was taking
that is
Ancestry.
Early, yeah.
I was taking Ancestry because I thought, well, this is fun, ethnicity, and it matched up, at that time it was so early, but it matched up basically with my paper trail. Yeah. And I really didn't, I'm not a science person. I'm not a math person. I'm not a science person. I'm not interested in any of that. And I was just interested in the ethnicity part of it. And I wasn't really searching for cousins. I grew up in New England. We have the best records ever in New England. Yes. Didn't need that. And then it was 2014. I was at a genealogy conference, Jamboree in California. And 23andMe came out, and it was like the new kid on the block kind of thing. And it was all about my my health, health reports.
Right.
And I thought that would be great. So that sounds fun. That sounds really fun. Let's do that. And my dad had passed away a couple of years earlier. And I said, while I'm here, I'm going to pick one up for my brother. I am the youngest of 5.
Yeah.
And so I said, let me pick one up for my brother, so we have that Y DNA kind of thing documented. And so I came home, he took the test, and I got the results back, and I took another one with 23andMe. And back then, this is 2014-ish, there wasn't a bunch of information. There wasn't, it was just like Irish, Scottish, English was kind of all clumped together.
Yeah.
And so results in I mean, I knew enough about DNA that we wouldn't share exact numbers of ethnicity, you know, or anything like that. There was no bells that went off or anything. And then I basically forgot about it for about a year. And then I actually had I started working as a part-time genealogist around that time. And I had somebody ask me about DNA, and I'm like, ugh, I don't know anything about that DNA stuff. And I'm like, I can't even remember who I referred her to. And I said, you know what, I should just go and take a look and try to kind of get a base. I should know what I'm talking about, at least so that if people ask me an easy question that's not science related, you know, maybe so I don't, you know, I know what I'm talking about. This is
That's
DNA.
kind of how I feel about the DNA too. So just
Yeah,
it's, you know, so I know kind of sound like I know what I'm talking about.
yeah,
So I get
like,
you there.
it's not going away. I should learn a baseline to it. And so yeah, that night, April 26th, 2015, none of us NPEs ever forget that our date that we found out. And I was in my bed. I had my iPad, and I'm like, let me just go through the website and kind of just get a baseline here, and I'll compare my brother and I, so I know what it looks like when siblings are compared. And yeah, and so I compared us, and all of this scientific stuff came up, and all these barcodes and get all kinds of things. And I was like, what? I don't understand any of this. And so I'm scrolling down, and there it was. It said estimated relationship, half sibling. And I try to describe this to people because it's hard to describe, but it's your body is reacting one way and your brain is reacting another. So my body, it was like somebody punched me in the stomach, took my breath away, and as I'm trying to get my breath back, I fall through a trap door, and I'm just like free falling. Like my body, I'm like, it's disorienting, and it's like your body kind of knows the fight or flight or whatever feeling.
Yes.
My brain immediately is saying what we all said: this got to be a mistake. This can't be right. And my second thing at the same time, trying to calm myself down, was, well, I don't know enough about this. I'm reading this wrong. And then the third thing that came to my head was, I was mad at my brother because I'm thinking he must have done something, you know, like left it in his car before he mailed it. And again, I didn't know anything about DNA. So I'm just, those were my reactions, all within a span of, you know, 30 seconds, not even kidding.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it was back then, again, there was no one-stop place where you could just plug in the centimorgans and what does that mean? This was still early. This was still early. And so I stayed up the rest of the night. That's when the denial kicked in hard. And I stayed up all night trying to find out what this number meant. What is this centimorgan thing? And what does it mean? And I just went into kind of a disassociated state. It's all I can describe it as, where I just was working at that point to prove it was wrong. And I didn't tell anybody for 18 months, not anybody, not one, not my husband, not anybody, because I couldn't face it, I think was a big part of it. But I just couldn't, you know, I just couldn't believe that it was true, first of all. And I had so many questions, and yeah. And so that was, you know, that was kind of the start of 18 months of trying to disprove it, is kind of where that went.
Yeah.
And then, you know, during that 18 months, I had an idea of possibly who my birth father could be. And I kind of pushed that out of my head for a long time. And I was just like, you know, I'm not even ready to go there yet. I was more, my dad had passed away at that point. My mother was still living, and it was like, okay, she lived down in Florida at the time. And I said, I'm not ready to have that conversation with her. And I think that the hardest thing was being a genealogist and learning this, because you're all about family stories, you're all about the family tree. And I think the biggest thing about this experience is people don't understand that yes, there's some anger involved. You go through the stages of grief, definitely.
Yes.
But the end result is a loss of identity.
Sure.
You don't know who you are anymore, because you identify a certain way with your family through family stories, through memory, living with, hearing stories about your grandparents. And all of a sudden, when you identify with your parents and the traditions growing up and all of that, and all of a sudden you like that whole side is gone. Like all that side it's not gone. It's not that I didn't love them, but all of a sudden I didn't feel that they belonged to me anymore. It was like this big emptiness. And when I did, not to jump way ahead, but when I did start to build my tree, when I figured out who my biological father was, it was a whole new ethnicity. It was a very hollow experience to build that tree, because I didn't have any life experience with these people. You're telling me this is my grandfather. I don't know anything about him except what's, his dates. And so it was a hard thing as a genealogist to really come to terms with that. And so I eventually confronted my mother, well, first I did tell my husband. Yeah, I should back up and say I did tell my husband eventually. And that was really at the, that was kind of a strange series of events, because I was really struggling. I was really, really struggling when it kind of all came together. I had my siblings test and I didn't tell them why. And each result came in and I compared them to each other, and they all came up as full siblings and half sibling to me, like each one. And then it was just feeling it all over again every time a result came in. And then my dad's first cousin, she was a woman in her 90s. She and I did genealogy together, and she tested, and that was my defining moment, because I said, okay, not knowing a lot about DNA, I'm like, well, maybe because I'm the youngest, I don't share as much DNA with them. I mean, it's crazy to say it out loud now. I mean, but that's kind of
any excuse.
Exactly.
Any excuse. The denial is
please
just
let this be wrong. Right.
Right. And so, but I knew if I tested, like, she was an outside source, but in the family, and I said, okay. And I tested, she asked me, anyway, she was planning to test anyway. And I compared her to my brothers and sisters, and they all shared the DNA that they should have. Thanks. And then I'll never forget her, comparing her to me, and it just said no DNA shared.
Oh, gosh.
And that was like my defining moment where I was like, okay, the jig is up here. I mean, there's no denying it now. And so I was struggling really badly, and people have heard me talk in conversation about my friend Bill Griffith, who wrote The Stranger in My Genes. He wrote this book about his NPE experience. Well, I didn't know Bill. Bill didn't know me. And I don't know if it was prayer. I don't know what it was, but on a night that I really needed it, his book just had come out, and it came through my Facebook feed. And I was floored. And not being a financial girl, I never saw him on TV before. I knew who he was, but I mean, he's a financial journalist. Yeah, so I was just like, and I just said, I gotta talk to this guy. I couldn't believe it. I was floored that he was, I downloaded his book on my Kindle, and I read it that night. And everything he was describing, it was what I was feeling. And I was like, I got to talk to him. So I ended up messaging him, and we became very good friends. And he really helped me, because he was a good year and a half ahead of me, almost 2 years, probably 2 years ahead of me. he, encouraged me to journal. He was so helpful. And because I said, I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to live with this. I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to live with this. And he just kept saying, you're going to be able to get through this process, and just trust me. And, just keep writing, just keep, feeling what you feel. And so again, I did tell my husband, and then I have 3 children. And so I told our children, they were adults. My daughters were adults. And I was worried about telling them because they knew my dad.
Sure.
That was their grandfather. And this was affecting them, their identity as well. And they were great. They took it very well. And I think they were more concerned that I had carried that burden for all those months by myself.
Sure.
But, they've been, we can kind of joke about some things about it now. Let's put it that way. I mean, it's been 8 years, for me.
Yeah.
And I finally told my, my siblings who I grew up with, I told them, about 5 years ago. And that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother show, but yeah, it came time to talk to my mother. I hadn't told my siblings.
I'm just sitting here thinking about how hard that it would be to now approach your mom, because
right.
I'm sure you're thinking all sorts of things about your mom. How did this happen? Why? And what? Yeah.
Right.
Oh, hard.
Exactly. And I didn't have the anger that I know some other MPs I've talked to. I don't know why. I don't know why I wasn't particularly angry at my mother, but I have a theory that if I had found this out when I was in my 20s, newly married, new mom, I would not have handled this well. And I think I would have had a lot more anger. But being 50, when I found out, I just think I had lived life. Right. You just have a little bit more understanding, and I don't know. I don't know. I just didn't judge her. I just felt I didn't live. I don't know what she was going through back then. I didn't walk in her shoes. I can't judge her. And if I wouldn't be here otherwise. My children wouldn't be my children,
Yeah.
So she was ill. We brought her up from Florida to live here, and she was ill. And I know I went back and forth about this because I'm like, I don't want to make her more sick. I don't want to upset her, but I'm like, I can't let her pass away and not find out. And so at that point, I had figured out who it was. I remembered this person from my childhood. I remembered that I remembered him till I was maybe 16 years old. I mean, in and out of our lives, just, as a friend. And so when I confronted my mother, it was a very gentle conversation of, I just said, remember that DNA test I took? Well, here's what I found out. And she was absolutely floored because I said his name, and she was floored that I figured it out. And I just had questions for her. And I knew she was embarrassed. I know she didn't want to talk about it. She was very nervous that I was going to maybe start getting angry with her. And my biggest thing was that I wondered if my dad knew, because I call my dad, who raised me. And and because that was really important to me. My dad was just a very, very sweet, uncomplicated guy. We were very close. And so it was, and she said, no, he didn't. Whether he figured it out, I don't know, but he certainly never treated me any differently. And my biological father did know. He was married, and that was just kind of how it was. And so when I said this to my mother, the first thing out of her mouth was, I wasn't ever going to tell you. she was going to take it with her. And I said, why, why would you feel that way? And she said, because I didn't think it would do anybody any good. You had a good dad who loved you. You had a good life, all true. And she came from a generation where, first of all, they certainly could never anticipate DNA being a thing. And yeah, and so she talked about it one or two more times. But I couldn't, and only if I asked her. She was very uncomfortable with it. And I just got to the point where I said, that I've got to be happy with, I got the basic answers, and I've got to be happy with that. And, and that's just the way it was. And she kind of indicated to me that she hoped that I would wait until she died before I told my siblings. I think she was very nervous about that reaction. And so I did. And and their reaction was, it's very involved, the reaction, but some of them didn't take it very well, and are still not taking it so well. And it's hard, it's really hard, because I was the baby. So we're eight years into it, and it's still a challenge. I'm telling you, it's still a challenge at times. I see Laura's hand up.
Yeah. You wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah, I was so glad that you talked about the actual physical feelings of your emotions as you found out, because I think it's hard for us to take it like this philosophical thing, it could happen to us, to really realizing how impacted someone is. And I remember, and you're probably not getting very original responses for us here because we all know your story, on the panel. But I remember talking to you once, and you're telling me like some of the things that people say that really, to comfort you, that really aren't helpful. And I think that would be great for you to share.
Yes, absolutely.
Because people are mean well, but sometimes all of us who mean well are going to say absolutely the wrong thing. So I wonder if you could talk about that a little.
Yeah, this has kind of become my mantra. When people ask me, this is the first thing that I will tell them: the 3 things not to say to an NPE, especially an NPE who just has heard. I found out this information. First thing you don't say your dad is still your dad, and that surprises people because we know that people are saying that to comfort us, to reassure us. We know where that's coming from, but that's not what we hear. What we're hearing is, why are you complaining? You had a great life. You had a great dad. Your dad is still your dad. Why are you thinking differently? Of course, you're not saying it that way, but that is how messed up we are. And now you're kind of invalidating what we're feeling, the confusion that we're feeling, and now you've just dumped that guilt on us that we're ungrateful for our wonderful dad. And it's like, it's such a complicated thing, because we know why you're saying it, but it's the worst thing to say. Don't say that until we say it. When we say it, it's agree with us.
That makes sense.
And the other thing to say, to not say, is that nothing's changed. Because everything has changed, and you are changed after this. And it doesn't mean you're changed for the worse. It just means you're not the same person anymore. And everything has changed, because you don't know how to identify yourself anymore. It's not that easy. It doesn't mean that you don't still have all the memories, all the experiences you did growing up, but you are changed. And it kind of leads into the third one, is you're still you. And yes, I'm still the same person, but I'm not the same person. And I'm changed. So like I said, 8 years for me, and I'm not curled up in a ball in the corner anymore, but I can go days and weeks not thinking about it, and all of a sudden something will trigger it. It could be a photo. It could be my nephew called a couple of months ago about something about the tree, and this is a nephew on my dad's side, and it made me like so sad that I wasn't like his full aunt. Like, it just made me so sad, and it's like, it doesn't mean the closeness between him and I doesn't change that, but it just feels that, that it's a loss. It's a big loss. So I would say those are the things. Yeah, definitely not to say, even though, and then some people say, well, what should I say? Don't say anything. Don't say anything, or just say, I can't even imagine how you're feeling. Tell me how you're feeling.
Talk about it.
Because you're not going to say the right thing. You're just not. So yeah, so thank you for that question.
Mary, you've got a question?
Yeah, and I didn't know this story before earlier today when Cheri sent the link and I read it. And so, and I don't, I mean, if you're totally free to say, no, I'm not going to answer that. But I just am curious, you are the youngest in the family, and I'm second to the youngest, and I have siblings that are quite a bit older than I am. My parents had 6 kids, and so a long range. And when your siblings, your older siblings, you said that they were angry. Did they have any idea?
So,
but based on that, on what home was like at the time.
Yeah, no. So they weren't angry. They had a hard time dealing with the reality of it. Some of them did. One of my sisters in particular. But it's interesting you ask that, because when I told my siblings, I said, I found out that Dad's not my biological father. My other sister said, well, there always was a little bit of questions about that. Now, she's 12 years older than me. My brother, that DNA tested first, he's 13 years older than me. And so my sister had an inkling. I don't look anything like my brothers and sisters. I don't. And so, but my other siblings, my brothers, I mean, I don't know. No offense, Dan, but guys sometimes, they're just kind of doing their own thing when they're growing up, right? And they didn't notice anything. And my youngest sister, she won't talk about it anymore. It upsets her to talk about it, because I was her baby. She was 10 years older than me. She used to carry me around, and it was, yeah. So no, I mean, we had a great childhood. I'm a lucky NPE. There's lots of stories that aren't like mine, so.
Shelley, you have a question?
Yeah, and I'm thinking of the family situation and questioning, are they angry at you, or are they angry at your mother? And how are they feeling about your dad?
Again, I don't think the word anger is the right word. I think,
Okay.
I don't know what the right word is, though.
Okay.
Definitely not angry at me. Definitely all rallied around me, and you're still our sister. And I allowed them to say that. that was an okay thing to say. And I think I think there was some feelings about my mother, but not really expressed to me. I think they just were more concerned about comforting me and assuring me that nothing changed. I had crazy thoughts being the genealogist. I have all of my dad's stuff, like all the family stuff, all the old photo albums, everything. And I'm thinking, I'm not giving you guys those. Those are still mine.
Definitely.
And so I tried to make light of it a little bit,
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was more of a disappointment. But again, we were all older. I think you get
That
I
might,
don't know, I think you
that
just
could
kind of,
weigh in there too.
Maturity,
Yeah.
the maturity
you just
factor.
kind of maturity and a realistic, I don't
Yeah.
know, people have flaws,
Yeah.
that's kind of thing.
Well, I'm
And-
sure it's helped. I'm sorry, Shelley. I was just gonna say, I'm sure
Yeah.
it's helped you to write the blog posts about it and connect with others. And if you don't want to talk about this, that's fine. But we happen to, witness a great connection at Roots Tech with you and Sean Aston. And I didn't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about that, because that was amazing.
That was amazing. So when I heard Sean Aston was going to be at Roots Tech, everybody else is like, oh, Goonies and The Hobbit and, Rudy. And I'm like, NPE. Oh my God, I can't wait to meet him. And I probably spoiled it for people who didn't know he was an NPE. I knew he was an NPE. And I just knew he was the kind of guy that I could talk to. And, but as a Roots Tech media person, we had to officially sign up for interviews and things like that. And I didn't get in time. I didn't get a spot. And so I'm like, oh man, what am I going to do? And so he came into the media hub, and Scott Fisher from Extreme Genes, I said, can you ask him a question, please? Ask him how he is, with his NPE status. And, I just asked him, like a general question. And so Scott started asking, but I kept just sort of inching up to the group, I just started
you up.
Yeah, you're pushing me up.
We were all pulling you up. Yeah.
And we were sort of inching up, and then Scott asked the question, and then one of you like went like this with my arm or something.
I think it was Laura. I think Laura was like, it's her.
Or did one of these,
Somebody, yeah.
Well, anyway, he was just a wonderful guy. He talked a long time about his experience and what a great man he was raised by. And it was just a very emotional moment for me to hear him say some of the same things that I felt, but also to see he's a very positive attitude. And then when I saw him for the meet and greet that was around the corner at Roots Tech, they were rushing people in and out to get pictures with him. He absolutely stopped everything and talked to me, and he goes, how you doing? How you really doing? He took my hands, and it was a beautiful, experience to chat with him and kind of get that positive vibe from him.
Yeah, that was a wonderful thing for all of us that were there to experience and just see the change, the light in you as you connected with him was just amazing.
You guys were so supportive. I appreciated it so much, because it's still a very, tender thing. It's still a very triggering thing, it probably always will be.
Do you think part of it was too, for someone to absolutely be able to say, I know how you feel?
Yeah.
Versus all of us that say, I can't imagine how that feels.
Yeah. And that's why Bill Griffith and I connected, because, it was just, he knew how I felt. And I knew how he felt, and he's the one that encouraged me to journal, which I have a journalism degree, so I guess I'm putting it to good use now. So
yeah. And I'm sure the journaling has helped. And look, Melissa has popped in. Yay. Hi, Melissa.
Hello. Hi.
We're glad you're able to join us.
Yes, journaling has helped a lot. And I decided to journal publicly. What you're reading now is kind of a combination of like my old journal notes and some new stuff, because I kind of was hiding in plain sight for a long time, because I have 3 other half biological siblings.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, and I just felt like I didn't want to hide anymore. Like I was just born. I didn't do anything wrong here.
Yeah.
It's like I shouldn't have to. I got to just live my life. So
tell me about that. So your biological father had other children, and so have you been able to meet with them? How are they dealing with it?
Yeah. So we're in the area that I live in. It's a small area. I still live in the same area that I grew up in, and where my biological father grew up in, and where my half siblings on that side grew up. And so I actually knew who they were, like knew them. They knew who I was, but obviously, and they didn't know who I was as far as half sibling. But I actually worked on an event with them, and I didn't know at the time of this event. I knew I was an NPE, but I'm still struggling great. And I didn't know when I first started. And then I found out, and I put it all together, and I was like, what am I going to do? I can't tell them.
Right.
And so I didn't tell them until a year ago. I wrote my half sister a 1-page letter and mailed it to her. And I basically, I didn't want to go on and on and on and on. I just kind of just said, I would love to share with you, if you'd like to hear how I discovered this, I'd love to share that with you. I'll leave it up to you if you want to have a relationship with me. But I sort of, when I wrote this letter, I said, you know what, I'm not going to like beg to be in their family. That's not like, I don't want to come across that way. I want to come across with, I've had a wonderful life. I have been very blessed with, I had a wonderful dad, and I would love you to meet my family. I would love you to become a part of my family. And so they didn't think, a lot of NPEs, one of the things that we come up against is that the biological family says, what do you want? You want money? You want to be in the will? And and it's you're immediately trying to like apologize, and so anyway, didn't go very well. Pretty much they ghosted me. Did not. I just heard from my biological sister about a month ago in an email about something else that we were involved in, and it wasn't she didn't mention anything about what I told her. She just was very cold and cool, and they're struggling, I'm sure, as well. They had an idea of what their family, what their dad was, so, but unfortunately I don't have that happy ending of, being reunited with, and being welcomed. I don't know what's going to happen.
Maybe
so.
time,
Maybe time. I've had 8 years, and and I said, they've had a year.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're much older than me. And I think they also come from a generation that is embarrassed that, how I came to be. And I think that's some of it. And I think that was kind of what spurred me on to just say, you know what, my DNA is out there. I am still hiding in plain sight. If anybody wants to contact you from that side of the family, I thought it would be better if they heard it from me than heard it from someone else who we might both be related to. And so yeah, that's what it is.
I hope that situation gets better as time goes on. Shelley, you said you've got another question?
Yeah, and I think you're making excellent points, because I think there's so many people, especially in this field that we're in, that we're seeing this pop up, pretty much on, I'm going to say, I hate saying a regular basis, but it's popping up. It's becoming common. And it's almost like, so you went to journaling, you held on it for a while, you went to journaling to help get through that. So, but do you get through it? Or I don't know how to ask the question, but
right,
you know where I'm going, how you're still adjusting. And do you think, and I'm saying this for someone I know that's going through this, and one of the reasons I'm saying that is because the wife of the biological dad was right down the street from where she was at. And she was in her 90s and didn't want to upset, knew the lady, nice lady, you know, was worried that all of this would come out. And you know, and it was like, where do I go from here? And that's what I'm trying to see. Do you have anything you could share that helps you get through? Because you're talking 8 years, that's long,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and you might have needed that, which you took it. And I'm making that as advice.
Right.
Take the time that
Right.
you need to
Right.
deal with this. And then where do
Right.
you go from here? You said journaling, but what if I don't journal?
So, I mean, one of the things that that I did was I joined a support group. There's a
Okay.
group on Facebook, 10,000 NPEs,
Wow.
10,000.
You guys might want to clarify non-paternal event or
Yeah.
clarify that in case there's somebody
Not
that
parent.
doesn't
You know,
know.
we call ourselves not parent expected. And then it's
Expected,
called
yeah.
non-parental event.
Yeah.
And so I really needed to, I needed to get some support. I know a lot of NPEs that go to counseling. I know a lot of NPEs that go on medication. I mean, this is a trauma. This
Yeah.
is a traumatic thing. And so this Facebook group, it's called DNA NPE Friends. It's a secret group, but I mean, we're allowed to tell people about it. It's a big vetting because you're so afraid that someone's going to find out who, you know, at first. And so that was very, very helpful to just talk with other people.
Mhm.
And I think the thing about being an NPE is that we share a lot of the same feelings, but our stories are all slightly different. Like I said, I feel lucky because I've heard some stories where it's coming, you know, it came from a very bad home, or, you know, didn't have a good dad. So I would say, you know, talking about it is really the best, because I didn't talk about it for a long time. Just talking about it with a friend who doesn't, you know, who's just listening, because
Mhm.
you just want to be
No
validated.
judging. Yeah.
No judging, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, you don't get over this. You get through it. You get through what you need to get through to live your life, you know. And when I say 8 years, I still struggle with it. It's just, there's just trigger moments that, you know, for the most part. And so, yeah, are some people after a year, great. And yeah, because maybe they have that happy ending of being accepted into the new family, the new bio family.
Mhm.
You know, that could be part of why it's taken me so long, is I don't have that closure. So that's just my theory.
Mary,
Thank
you
you
said
for
you have a
that.
question.
Everyone on this panel will attest that I research anybody just because I am a research addict. And so I research all the people on the TV shows.
Exactly.
And,
Yes.
She's in rehab now.
She's in rehab.
No, she's not. She blew that
no,
off.
she's not.
We
Did
call
she
it,
have a break? What?
She escaped. She escaped.
we always say
Um,
she married it. So.
So, as a genealogist, not as a DNA test taker, are you researching your biological father's family? Is that of interest to you?
Yes. So when I figured it out, who I thought it was, through a series of an old message on one of the DNA sites of a woman that had contacted me a year earlier, before I even knew anything, who matched me, was asking me all kinds of questions, and I'm like, I don't have any Irish people in me, leave me alone. You know, she kept saying, are you Irish, I don't see any Irish people on your tree. I'm like, because I'm not Irish. I'm not. Well, turns out you know, my biological father was 100% Irish.
Oh, wow.
100%. But, you know, but So I had to try to, so what I did is when I figured out who I thought it might be, I started building his tree.
Yeah.
And so now that is a main focus of mine, because you're kind of trying to find that connection, you're trying to find that connection. And Bill and I have talked about this. Well, do you research your old biological, your old tree? And he and I had a similar kind of sad feeling where you just don't look at it the same way. And it's very hard. It's very hard for me to do research. I'll answer questions, for my family and all that, but you feel disconnected to that side. And then you don't feel connected to this new side. So you're kind of in no man's land somewhere. So as a genealogist, so yes, I'm absolutely very, very curious, because it's a whole new ethnicity. It's a whole new, it could be something more exotic. Being Irish is not all that unusual, but if you haven't grown up, I grew up, I'm here in New England. Being Irish is kind of a big deal here. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
You got a badge of honor now.
Exactly. But you grow up in a culture of
Sure.
being Irish and doing all the Irish festivals, and I don't have any of that. And so you're always kind of chasing that connection. So
That's amazing. Laura, you said you have another.
Yeah, what I was debating about which question to ask, because I wanted to ask about ethnicity and you answered that. So
okay.
the other thing, what is your advice to people who are thinking about whether they want to take a DNA test, and how casual to feel about it, how hard of questions to ask their family members before they do it?
It's hard, because somebody could have told me, oh, you better be careful, you better talk to your family. I wouldn't have listened. I was just excited to do it. And I think it's a hard thing. Of course I want to say to people, hey, just know that that you could get some unexpected results, whether you or grandfather or whatever. But I would never say don't take one. I just feel like, one way or another, you deserve to know who you are. And there was a time that in those first 18 months, I can't even tell you how much I regretted taking it. Like, I was like miserable and mad at myself for taking, like, why would, you just like ruined everything. It's kind of like you're just blaming yourself, which isn't logical, but it was at the time. But you deserve, of course I'm glad I know, because my feeling is I was meant to find out at the time of my life. I did. And also I was meant to find out while my mother was still alive, to get the answers to share with my children, because if I didn't know, somewhere down the line it would have come up and they wouldn't have known the story.
Yeah.
And at least I know the story, and because I knew him, and I can fill that in. So I don't know.
Yeah, if your daughters had found that out later down the road, then there wouldn't have been the answers.
Yeah.
No, there wouldn't have been the answers. And that's why I just feel like it was meant to be. Yeah,
I know someone who recently, they following up on a DNA test, she figured out her grandfather was adopted. So she has a little opposite of what you have, because she all her life has considered herself half Irish. And it turns out her grandfather was adopted by an Irish family, but he was French.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But, like you said, all these St. Patrick's days, and she's like, and my maiden name isn't really my maiden name.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the same thing with I'm not a Murphy.
Yeah.
And we just found that out last year. Good old DNA. And I have not, or they could hear it now, but I have not.
Breaking news on GenFreinds.
I haven't told everybody.
She hasn't told everybody. Mary, I haven't. You've got a question? I'm sorry, Shelley, I didn't mean to talk over you. I'm sorry.
No, I just said I haven't yet. I got to get ready for that mentally.
Yeah.
Dan.
I helped a friend of mine who was adopted and knew that he was adopted, and found a half niece, and the half niece asked her grandmother, so his mother, to test, and she tested. She wasn't. I mean, she shows up as his mother. She didn't want any contact with him. Didn't want anything to do with him. But she took the test knowing that, I mean, her granddaughter had tested. She had to have known this was going to come in. You said, I think I read in your blog that your mother tested. Did she? That's curious to me. How do you feel about that now? Was she hesitant at first?
Well, oh yeah. So the first one I sent her, she lived in Florida, and I think it was around the time that I tested, and I just thought it'd be fun for her too. And she lost it, which I know she didn't. Yeah, it's like $99, Mom. You know, she lost. She said, I can't find it anywhere. She fessed up later. You know, she didn't want to take it. And then I made her take it, or my sister actually like stood over her and made her take it because at first I was like, maybe weird things go through your mind, and maybe I'm adopted, you know, maybe being the youngest, you know. I know that my mother actually had some complications after my youngest brother was born. Maybe she wanted another. So I just said, you know what, she's going to test too. And she didn't particularly want to, but I mean, my sister didn't force her, but I mean, it was just like, yeah,
The expectation that she would do this. Yeah.
But she didn't understand DNA either. So, I mean, I think she didn't really, you know, that's why she was floored that I had figured out who it was and all that. So she kind of just didn't anticipate DNA ever, you know, revealing it.
Yeah. Why did she not want you to know? Did she ever say?
She just had the mindset. I honestly feel like she felt she was just protecting me. She was protecting our family, his family.
Right.
You know, there was, you know, I had a great family, you know, why, you know, why mess that up? Why there was no feeling that they were going to be together and leave their spouses. There was nothing, you know, but they had a long-term relationship. My parents ended up divorcing. And so, yeah, and that's a whole nother story. But I really do feel that, and again, that's comes with maturity. I really feel like she thought she was protecting everyone. Yeah. And she was embarrassed.
And think about the time frame too. You know, we talked about that. You just you don't talk about things like that, and you hoped it would never come out. And why would it? Why would anybody ever know? You know, you keep that secret with you. You know, we didn't know that this little thing where we could spit into a tube or scrape.
And you know, people ask me, you know, were you angry with your mother? And like I said at the beginning, you know, I didn't have that. I'm not happy that she kept it from me, because you do in a way mourn for relatives that you'll never meet, you know, in a way. You kind of deprived me of that in a way, but I don't know, I just didn't choose to think of it that way. And be I didn't like that she kept it from me and lied to me, basically, but that wasn't my focus.
Mary.
I just have one more question. So did you know him? I mean, had you met him?
Yeah. He had a small market, and I remember going in there, and I remember him carrying me around. I remember he loved children. I just remember him many years until I was a teenager, just kind of coming by, you know, where all of us were, you know, all my brothers and sisters were. So he was in our life, and I don't know the understanding that they had between them. did he come around to see me, to see how I was? He was alive when all of my children were born. And my mother did say that when my youngest was born, she called him, and, because those were my kids were his first grandchildren.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Does what you know now, how does it color those memories that you had of him? I mean, is it creepy or endearing or what?
I wouldn't say it's endearing. I feel lucky. I feel lucky that I had interactions with him, because a lot of NPEs don't. Maybe and he had passed away by the time I had figured it out. So I think, I don't know, I'm sort of a glass half full kind of person anyway. So I'm really I think that just helped the situation. So I look back at it and I feel fortunate that I can say that I have memories, and not a lot. I mean, not a lot, but I have some. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just as a comment, I kind of know, because I know your story so well. If you had lived in a major metropolitan area, your story might be totally different.
Exactly.
Or if but it's a little unique because of the small community.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
everybody already kind of having a context for everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, I'm out, but I'm not really fully out, but I'm not hiding either. Like, I don't talk about this on Facebook, and I do that really but I do on my other social media channels, and I do on my blog. I kind of do that out of respect for my brothers and sisters, just because there's so many of our childhood neighborhood on Facebook, people we all went to high school with. I don't want to put them in the situation where they're going to have to start answering a lot of questions.
Right.
And that would happen on Facebook. So so there's still a lot of people that don't know. I just told somebody last week who I've known since we were in kindergarten. They're like, "Oh my God, really?"
Well, hopefully, as this gets posted, everybody's gonna know now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
that won't cause too many issues. But I do think that what you're doing and talking is going to help so many other people, just as you have been helped by others who wrote books or took the time to share with you and speak with you. They've helped you. This is going to help so many other people. So I applaud you for taking such a hard topic, such a personal thing, and talking about it so that it helps other people. I just, I know it's hard, but there's going to be people that you are going to touch. Maybe somebody else didn't touch them, but because of something you said, it helped them. I think sometimes we all get helped by a unique circumstances, and somebody can say something to us and it doesn't resonate, but then somebody else says it and it does. And so I know that there are people out there that only you can help. And so I really, really applaud you for doing this, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
And I didn't know if Melissa, coming in late, had any questions that she wanted to ask, or if Dan wanted to say anything. Wanted to give you guys that opportunity before we wrap things up.
I'm good.
Okay, everybody good. Thank you, Jenny, for coming and doing this. This is
I really appreciate you letting me talk about this and get this out here, that my blog's a little bit of a bummer right now, because I'm recounting all the emotional stuff, but it gets better. It's just, I feel like I'm depressing everybody right now. I'm hearing,
we'll have the link to share. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah. I'm hearing from a lot of people. I am hearing from a lot of NPEs just in the 6 weeks that I've done that. So
good.
Oh, really? That's good.
So glad. And you're helping those of us that don't have that situation or haven't discovered that situation know what to do. I like that you say, don't say these things. These are the things not to say. This is how not to support someone who's going through this, because we do. It's like with a death or anything else. We want to help. We want to say the right things. We don't know what to say. And then we end up saying things that we think are helping, but they're not. And so people mean it. you know, they're trying to be helpful and supportive, but sometimes our words aren't what they should be. And the only way to know that is for people to let us know. And so I appreciate that, as well as everything else that you've taught to us and taught us about tonight. So thank you so much. We
Thank
appreciate
you for having me.
So happy. You are welcome on GenFriends anytime, my friend.
Thanks.
So grateful to have you here. And with that, we would like to hear our viewers. We would like to hear your stories, and if you're going through these things, and how you have been able to deal with it, and what you learned through Jenny about how to deal with your friends that may be going through this, or, you know, other people that you know. What have you learned, and how will you handle it better when you find out that someone is struggling, and also what you've done if you are going through this, what you've done to help yourself, and to get through, as Jenny was talking about. You're never going to get over, but you can get through it. And so what are some of your tips? We would love to hear those and add those along with the other comments for the show tonight. So with that, thanks everybody for being here, and we will see you next time on GenFriends. Bye everybody.
Bye.